Hello and welcome to Lost Love Chronicles. I came home from a tough day at the office and didn't see my wife. Jane, I called up the stairs. I'm home. I'll be right down, Tarzan. That was our little joke. We met at a costume party where I was dressed as Tarzan. We almost collided, and I said, "Excuse me." You Tarzan," she interrupted, poking me in the chest, me Jane, pointing her finger at her delectable cleavage. Then she broke out laughing. It turned out her name really was Jane, and we have been Tarzan and Jane ever since. We've been married for what I thought were happy years, and I popped open a beer, sat on the couch and put on the 6 o'clock news. They had just finished the headlines when Jane came down the stairs. My eyes nearly popped out of my head. She was wearing my favorite little black dress. It came to mid-thigh, and while the cleavage might not have been red carpet worthy, it wasn't exactly modest either. I knew it was totally backless, which meant that she wasn't wearing a bra, though the movement of her breast gave that away anyway. She was also wearing the necklace I gave her on our anniversary, just a month earlier. I picked up my phone to capture the vision for posterity. Little did I know what I would really need it for. "Well," I said eloquently, "I didn't know we were going out. Give me a few to freshen up and change." "Where are we going, anyway?" "We're not going anywhere. Robert Cohen invited me out to dinner and dancing tonight. I'll probably be late, so don't wait up." "Not Bob Cohen, the creep who was banned from all company parties after he got fresh with one too many married women? He's not like that. It was just an uptight woman with a jealous husband who caused all the trouble." "Well, there's one jealous husband right here that says that there is no way I'm allowing you to go out with him." "Allow me." "You don't own me," she said, starting for the door. "I may not own you, but when we made our wedding vows, we gave ourselves to each other. That meant something to me. I thought it meant something to you." "Oh, don't be so medieval. This is the 21st century. Nobody believes in that shit anymore." "Gee, I wish you had told me that sooner, so that we could have gotten divorced and dated whomever we wanted." "Divorce?" As if, she threw her head back laughing. Following her to the door, I grabbed an old friend out of the coat closet as Alexis pulled into the driveway. "There's Robert now. Order yourself some pizza or something." She walked out the door. "Jane," I said, and as she turned around, I ripped the dress right off of her, leaving her standing there in just a skimpy black thong and heels. She froze a moment, then ran back into the house. I started walking towards the Lexus, tapping the Louisville Slugger into my left palm and Cohen threw his car into reverse, burning rubber getting away from there. Nodding to the neighbors who had enjoyed Jane's free show, I went back into the house, returning the bat to the closet. I got a fresh beer as the first one had gotten warm, and sat back down to await the fireworks. I didn't have to wait long before Jane came back down wrapped in her robe, and she was steaming mad. I couldn't keep track as she ranted and raved, as Paul Simon said. I heard words I never heard in the Bible. I just sat there until she wound down. "Just what were you thinking? Or were you thinking?" I asked her. "I don't know. Our life has become so routine. We never seem to have fun like we used to. How is it that I'm only hearing about this now? Not to mention that the last few times I've tried to get you to do anything different, you were always too busy, or weren't interested, or it was gross. Even if you could somehow justify cheating on me, why humiliate me with this attempt to cuck me? Because I didn't want to cheat. I figured if I told you, it wouldn't be cheating. That's the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. Having sex with another person without my permission is cheating. Maybe you could give me permission," she said, looking up at me hopefully. "You really have lost your mind. I've got to get out of here before I say or do something that one or both of us will regret." I grabbed my keys and was out of there before she could even get out of her chair. I did what any other manly man would do in this situation. I went in my favorite bar to cry my beer. "What's the matter, John?" Sam said as he put another bottle in front of me. "You look like you lost your best friend." "You may not be that far off, Sam. When I came home tonight, Jane was dressed to the nines, told me she was going out with this creep from work, and that I shouldn't wait up." "You told her no, of course." "Of course, I did. What kind of a cup do you take me for?" I was just about to wipe the silly grin off his face when he said, "Just messing with ya, man." "So, what happened then?" "Oh, she gave me all the usual bullshit about how I didn't own her, that fidelity was medieval. I take it you didn't buy what she was selling? You got it in one." Right at that moment, the a-hole pulled into the driveway and Jane headed out the door. "She didn't." "What did you do then?" I grabbed to persuade her out of the closet, followed her out and ripped the dress right off her. She froze for a minute, then realized that all the neighbors could see her in just her thong, and she ran back into the house. I started walking towards the car with my persuader, a Louisville Slugger, and the creep took off. "Seems like a win for you. So what brings you to my humble establishment?" The win was only momentary. I was nursing a beer when she came downstairs, loaded for bear. When she calmed down some, she started in again on the bullshit. Our sex life was routine. It wouldn't be cheating if she didn't do it behind my back, if I gave her permission. Sam was speechless. That's when I had to get out of there, and here I am. Sam popped open a couple more cold ones, we clinked bottles and drank them dry. I had one more before I decided that I'd better stop before risking a DUI. Good night, and good luck, John. Thanks, Sam. I think I'm gonna need it. When I got home, Jane was already in bed. I performed my evening routines, pulled on my pajama bottoms, and got into bed, rolling over with my back to Jay. As I fell asleep, I thought I heard her softly sobbing, but I ignored it. Jane was already up and making breakfast when I came downstairs. Breakfast was a quiet affair, until we finished cleaning up, and Jane started in again. John, why can't you see that times have changed? Nobody expects to only be with one person for their entire lives. Well, I do, and I don't think that I'm alone. As for being with one person their entire lives, neither of us were virgins. We've been with other people. You know that's not what I mean. We were little more than children then. We barely knew what went where. We have more experience now, more to compare with. I don't need to compare anything. I compared plenty before I asked you to marry me, and I asked you because I knew you were the one I wanted to spend my life with. When you said yes, you were saying that you felt the same way. Were you lying? No, but what? Have you changed your mind? If you have, then maybe we should get a divorce. I don't want a divorce. Well, you can't have it both ways. If you don't want a divorce, then you have to forget this foolishness. Looking down, she said, I don't want a divorce. Then, it's settled, I said, though I wasn't really sure that it was. Even though Jane claimed that she had given up on the idea of another man, I found it hard to believe her. I was worried if she was a little later than expected, especially if she didn't call first. I became convinced that she might still want to take a lover, but behind my back this time, and started trying to check up on her. Oh, I didn't hire a PI, but a bug on her phone or a GPS on her car. I just started dropping in on her for lunch on random days, calling her at odd times. I could feel the tension growing between us, and I'm sure she could feel it, too. It even affected our lovemaking. It was less spontaneous, more tentative, lacking the passion that it had before all this started. Finally, I bit the bullet. Jane, I want a divorce. She was shell-shocked. But I thought we were okay. Really? You think that we're okay? That we're anywhere close to where we used to be? Where we need to be? She looked down, shook her head no. Telling our parents was the hardest part. They couldn't understand why we couldn't work things out. When my father-in-law cornered me one day, I showed him the picture of how she was dressed, and he backed off. We faced more questions from the family. I let the blame flow over me to save Jane the embarrassment, but I finally had to show them the picture and tell them what she tried to do. She actually came to me looking for sympathy for all the criticism she was receiving. John, isn't there anything that I can do to change your mind about the divorce? I put my hand to my chin and thought I came up with an idea that she would never go along with. Okay, Jane, I won't stop the divorce, but I will put it on hold under one condition. Her mood brightened considerably. Anything, John, anything. Be careful when you say that. Anything covers a lot of territory. I'm not worried, she said. I'm sure you won't go off the deep end. Just what is your condition? I'll let you date other men, as long as I can date other women. I was sure I saw her smirk before she hid it behind a sugary sweet smile. Of course, John, that's only fair. The bitch. I'll bet she didn't think that I could get another woman. There's one more thing, I said. What's that? You can't go out until I get a date. She seemed agitated. I knew she had her guy all lined up, and I figured that she was worried what would happen if I couldn't find anyone. I decided to throw her a bone. If I can't find a date in 2 weeks, you can go on your date. That brought out one of the brightest smiles I had seen from her in weeks, and she threw her arms around my neck, kissing me all over my face. That's wonderful, John. Thank you. You'll see, this will be just the thing to reinvigorate our marriage. Yeah, reinvigorate it right into the toilet. A few days later, I know she was shocked when I told her that I had a date, and suggested that we have a double date the following Friday. I think she agreed because she thought I was bluffing, and that she would have her date while I sat home all alone. Unbeknown to Jane, I had made arrangements for a date that I hoped would end this foolishness once and for all. I took a long lunch on Monday to get some new threads and left them in the car. Friday, I left work early so that I could get my hair styled and still get home before Jane. I snuck my new clothes into the guest room and was in the shower when I heard the garage door opening, shaved, and with my teeth brushed. I went into the bedroom to finish getting ready. I think I surprised her when I came out of the guest room wearing my new outfit and my new hairstyle, but she recovered quickly. Robert will be picking me up at 6:30. That's fine. Our reservation at Amelia's is for 7 o'clock. They're in my name in case you get there before us, I said as I went out the door. What Jane didn't know was that we had a new employee at work, Candide DeSantis. Candide was a red-headed bombshell who made every red-blooded American male's head swivel whenever she walked by. She was completely professional and never gave the office gossips anything to whisper about. We had struck up a casual friendship, and when she would occasionally flirt with me, I would politely shut her down, showing her my wedding ring. Needless to say, she was curious when I asked her to meet me for drinks after work. I got to the bar before her, and was staring morosely into my drink when she arrived. "So, John, what happened to break the last American Boy Scout out of his shell?" she said with a laugh. One look at my sad eyes snapped her out of her teasing mood. "Oh, John, I'm so sorry," she said as she placed a warm hand on top of mine. "I didn't mean to tease you, but you're usually so straight. You look like you've lost your best friend." My eyes started to tear up, and I looked away. She put her arm around my shoulder and led me to a table as I grabbed my drink. She sat patiently as I gathered my nerve and told her my sad story. "Well," she said, "there's only one thing we can do." "We?" I asked. "Yes, we. I'll be your date." I laughed for the first time since Jane came up with her crazy idea. "Why are you laughing?" "I'm serious." I stared into her eyes for a few moments, expecting a big gotcha that never came, and finally realized that she was serious. "Why? Why me? I know you don't mess with married men. Hell, you barely mess with single men. If they thought that they had half a chance, all the straight guys and half the gay guys in the office would be lining up to date you. I'm not looking for just any date. As you say, I can date just about any guy I want. I really like you. Maybe because you're not always undressing me with your eyes." "Yes," I said, "not always. I know you do sometimes. You'd have to be dead to never do it. But you always treat me with respect. When we're in meetings, you listen to my ideas, back me up when the other guys try to blow them off because they came for me. More importantly, I like you, and I'm pissed at your wife for treating you with such disrespect. So, do we have a date, or not? I may have been born at night, but not last night. You're on." I swallowed the rest of my drink and walked Candide to her car. She gave me her number and a friendly hug, and she was off. I thought my life was about to get very interesting. When I pulled up in front of Candide's apartment building, I barely had time to get out and open her door before she got to the car. She was a bit taller than Jane, but still shorter than me. Unlike Jane's LBD on her ill-fated date, Candide's dress was a little longer than knee-length, but skin-tight with a slit up the left side almost to her hip. It was emerald green, which set off her wavy bright red hair that reached halfway to her waist. It showed significantly more cleavage than I had ever seen on Jane, and she almost had a nip slip as I helped her into my car. As I got into the driver's seat, I was treated to an expanse of creamy white thigh before she adjusted her dress, giving me a big grin. "There'll be time enough for that later, cowboy," she said. I had to adjust myself before driving off, feeling embarrassed at her throaty laugh. As if I wasn't feeling self-conscious enough, she started rubbing my thigh, causing my tower to rise again. Fortunately, we arrived at the restaurant before things went too far, and I was under control as we walked into the restaurant. Jane and Robert were already there. I had seen Robert several times, and wasn't any more impressed by his appearance that night than the other times I had seen him. Jane, on the other hand, had gone all out, and I can't remember ever seeing her looking that hot. Robert didn't stand up, so I didn't offer him my hand, and only nodded to Jane as I helped Candide into her seat. Jane was obviously astounded that I had landed such a beautiful date. I think she was going to make some sort of a snarky remark, but thought better of it. Robert, on the other hand, couldn't seem to take his eyes off of Candide's cleavage, and Jane had to elbow him in the ribs to make sure that his eyes didn't wander. I thought that dinner might be awkward, but after a hesitant start, a casual observer would have thought that we were just two ordinary couples, not a husband and wife with different partners. After dinner, we went to a club for drinks and dancing. When the dances were fast, there were no particular issues, but when a slow dance started and Candide molded herself to me, Jane's looks could have killed. Jane started rubbing up against Robert. That looked like she was trying to have sex with him right on the dance floor. She was attracting the kind of attention that under normal circumstances would have embarrassed her, but she was in her own little world. When Robert's hand reached inside her dress to fondle her, I was embarrassed for her and took Candide back to the table. We continued watching Jane and Robert make a spectacle of themselves until a manager finally came over and tapped them on the shoulder. While I obviously couldn't hear what was said, they were apparently being asked to leave, as Jane came running back to the table in tears, grabbed her wrap and left the club, with Robert fast on her heels. "Well, you certainly know how to show a girl a good time," Candide said, giggling. I could only laugh, and we returned to the dance floor. When we were ready to leave, I approached the manager. "I'd like to apologize for our companions," I said. "Oh, no problem, sir. We don't blame you." "Well, I do feel a little responsible. You see, that was my wife, or should I say, soon-to-be ex-wife, and I think she was a little jealous of my date here." The manager was a little taken aback, and looked Candide up and down. "I see, sir," he said with a smile. "Please come back any time," he said as he returned to his duties. I took Candide back to her apartment, and saw her to her door. As I leaned in for a friendly goodnight kiss, she surprised me by pulling me in for a passionate kiss. "Would you like to come in for a nightcap?" she asked. Somehow, I thought she had a little more in mind than just a nightcap, but who was I to argue? The nightcap was forgotten as soon as the door closed, as she pushed me down on the couch and straddled my lap. We made love. I spent the night at Candide's, waking up to a gentle kiss. We showered separately, and while she was finishing up, I made her breakfast. "Well," she said, "a great lover, and he cooks. I may just keep you around." "About that," I said as we sat down to eat. "I like you a lot, and last night was absolutely the best I have ever had in my life, but I have to resolve the issues in my marriage, and even if we divorce, I don't know how soon I'll be ready for another relationship." "Don't worry, John. I was just teasing you. Don't get me wrong. I like you, too, and if things work out, I could certainly see us in a relationship, but you're right. First, you have to settle things with your wife." We finished eating, just making idle conversation, until I decided that I had to go home and see if there was anything left of our marriage to save. I walked in to find Jane sitting at the kitchen table, clutching a coffee cup. She looked up at me with eyes red from cry. One look at my satisfied face set her off on a new round of crying. I got a cup of coffee and sat down opposite her. "So, how was your night with Robert?" "Oh, John, it was horrible. All I could think of was you with Candide. She's so sexy and beautiful, I know I could never compete." "You do realize you wouldn't have had to worry about competing with her if you hadn't started this foolishness." She couldn't meet my eyes, but nodded her agreement. "I think I can safely say that you wouldn't be feeling so regretful if it had only been you and Robert, and I was left sitting at home, alone." She looked up, her eyes full of tears, then dropped her eyes as she nodded once again. "I just don't know what to do. One part of me wants to just kick you to the curb and start over with someone new." Jane was openly sobbing now. I'm sure she was thinking of me with Candide. "Then I look at you and see the woman I married, the woman I fell in love with. I don't see an evil bitch but a foolish girl, and I hope, that there's a way back for us." Jane looked up, hope shining in her eyes through her tears. "I'm going to change my clothes and go out for a while. While I'm out, I think you should move your things into the guest room. When I get back, we'll talk some more. Please don't make me move, John. How can we get back together if we're apart? I need you now more than ever." "You're not getting the point. It's not a given that we are getting back together. Maybe you should have thought about how much you needed me before you started this," I said before going up to my bedroom. Jane was still sitting at the table when I came downstairs and headed towards the door. "John," she said, and I turned around. "I love you." I just nodded and left the house. I know that sounds cold, but I needed her to feel how shaky our marriage was. I walked down to the Charles River and ambled along the banks, watching the crew rowers in their shells and the sailboats dancing on the water. I sat on a bench when I came across some families with young children. It sat to me as I wondered if I would ever see the children Jane and I have been talking about. I don't know how long I sat there, but I started to feel a chill as the sun went down. With a deep sigh, I hoisted myself to my feet and trudged back to her house. When I walked into the house, Jane was still sitting where I had left her. She looked up hopefully, but I just shook my head sadly and went up to my room and locked the door. I kicked off my shoes and stretched out on the bed fully clothed, throwing my arm over my eyes. I'm not sure how long I lay there before I heard a soft rapping on the door and a whispered, "John." I didn't respond, and after a second attempt I heard her move down the hall to the guest room. When I was sure she had retired for the night, I took a quick shower and fell into a restless sleep. I came down to find that Jane had cooked a big breakfast, and surprisingly, I had a good appetite, though Jane was just picking at her food. "John," she said, "do you think we could try counseling?" Counseling. I turned that over in my mind. I really didn't know much about counseling. Would they try to convince me to go along with Jane's foolishness? Did I want to work things out? One of the things that I learned from my night with Candide was that our sex life had gotten dull and routine. Did I really want to go back to that? I was still angry that Jane had never come to me with any complaints. I decided that there was still enough love in my heart for Jane that I didn't want to give it up without a fight. "Okay, Jane, let's give counseling a try." She nearly leapt out of her chair. "Let's get one thing straight right now," I said. "I don't want a counselor who wants to save our marriage. Maybe it can be saved. Maybe it can't. I won't stand for any hidden agendas." I could tell that she was disappointed. She must have been hoping for some new-age hippy-dippy shrink who would agree with her. The times have changed philosophy, but she had no choice but to agree. The counseling was remarkably effective. Jane came to see how her refusal to work with me actually fed into her dissatisfaction with our sex life, and I learned that I needed to be more assertive. We talked more about what we wanted, what we needed, what we expected from our sex life. While the counseling helped us work through many of our issues, I was still hung up on her betrayal, even if I kept her from completing it. For her part, Jane couldn't get over her insecurities revolving around Candide. No matter how much I explained that while I did have some feelings for Candide, I wasn't in love with her, and our date was just meant as a shot across her bow, she just didn't get it. We finally decided to get an amicable divorce. Once the divorce was final, I took stock of my life. No, I didn't hook right up with Candide. Instead, I booked a room in a B&B on the Maine coast. It was pre-season, so the weather was iffy, but that suited my mood to a T. I just wanted to decompress and do some soul-searching, deciding just where I wanted to go from here. When I returned, I did call Candide. We went out to dinner. and I did let her take me to her bed, but it was more for comfort than passion. I was thinking about how easy it would be to just take you in my arms and ask you to make this permanent. I'm very fond of you, and I know I could easily fall in love with you, but I don't know if that would be fair to either of us. My divorce is still very new and raw, and I'm concerned that this might be a rebound affair. I think it would be best if we both saw others, as well as each other, for a while. I don't know how long a while might be, and I won't ask you to wait for me to get my head on straight. I wish I could argue with you, but I'm afraid that you're right, she said. While I do think that we could make this work, it's probably better to be safe than sorry. We got out of bed and used the bathroom, showered separately, then had a quiet breakfast. I was tempted to throw caution to the wind and forget about seeing others, and I believe that Candide would have gone along, but I stuck to my resolve. We finished cleaning up, she walked me to the door, and we hugged each other tearfully. I guess this is goodbye, she said. No, not goodbye, I said. Just so long for now. Why don't we meet for dinner, say 2 weeks from Friday, just to check in? Okay, she said, giving me a kiss on the cheek and eased me out the door. The door closing sounded like a cell door, and I wasn't sure that I hadn't made the worst mistake of my life. I did meet Candide after 2 weeks. We had a nice conversation, and this time I just dropped her back at her place. 3 days later we had another date. 5 months later she moved in with me. It took another year before we got married. What happened to my ex-wife, Jay? She left her job and picked up another job at a different establishment. As for Robert, he was fired after he was caught with a female staff at their office. He is currently in hospital. The husband of the woman was an ex-Marine. He did not take the issue peacefully. Robert might not have a house once he gets out of the hospital. His wife has filed for divorce, and it does not look like she is going to go easy on him. 5 years later, I did see Jane at a local diner. She looked like a shell of her former self. She was frail, and it looked like she had aged by 20 years. Candide and I were having a good time, and I did not want any distraction. I gave a quick signal to Candide, and we left the diner without placing any order. I know Jane saw me, but I had no desire to interact with her. Life was fine without the complications. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comment section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.